Early on the morning of July 21st, Surrey was anchored off the coast of southern Bougainville. Everyone is excited at the prospect of finally getting to see the wreck of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's crashed Betty bomber, which has lain in the dense jungle for over 70 years. His death was a remarkable story of U.S. intelligence code-breaking and an unbelievable top-secret shoot-down mission by P-38 fighters from Guadalcanal. We go ashore and meet our vehicles, which will take us over the 24-kilometer jungle roads to the trail entrance to Yamamoto's bomber wreck. We finally get to meet our government customs agent, Israel, who will accompany us to observe our investigation of the bomber wreck. We make a quick stop in Buin, which was the site of one of the major Japanese air bases Yamamoto was headed towards when he was shot down. The Japanese airfield today is overgrown and is no longer in use. We gas up our vehicles and head out towards the wreck site. We finally begin our very rough 24-kilometer drive to the trailhead, over tortuous but thrilling jungle roads and through a number of swiftly flowing rivers.
Our trek just to get there on the rough jungle roads, our seatbelt was just holding on tight to the 2x4s that they made for seats. They were just sitting in the back of the pickup truck. They'd hit a bump and the 2x4s would come off the back of the pickup truck. It was kind of unnerving. And then when we were crossing some of the rivers, the wider ones that had a little bit of a current to them, you could actually feel the back end of the pickup truck starting to come out from underneath. Now, I was thinking, well, if we roll, I guess I better start swimming.
And it was a gradual thing into this experience, which was probably the toughest experience I've ever had, from the Jeep trip through the rivers and through the creeks. That started to get a little uncomfortable, and then when we ran out of roads, going through the mud, and that it was progressively worse and worse, and I asked myself, why do I want to do this? Because it was so doggone hot. Yes, my curiosity and World War II has always been, it was very high, especially on this particular journey, but I didn't know what to expect, and nothing at all could prepare me for the experience that we had.
After finally reaching the trailhead and negotiating permission from the landowner to hike to the wreck site, we set out on what we were told would be a half-hour hike. One of the locals who would accompany us informed me that I'll be watching you, big man. Our trek started out with everyone in good spirits, expecting what we were told would be an easy trek.
Turn around, Barry. Huh? Get a face shot there. You and your tribe there.
As the minutes ticked by, everyone became aware of how incredibly hot it had become. Locals began to appear out of nowhere, following us, anxious to see what these strangers were up to. Soon, our narrow jungle path turned into knee-deep mud, which wore you out just making your way through it. and on it went through streams and dense jungle growth. A half hour turned into 2 hours, and members of our group began to get apprehensive about how much longer it was going to take.
This was probably the hardest walk, hike that I'd ever done in my life. I felt I was in shape physically because I was told months in advance, we need to get in shape. I don't believe anybody mentioned the heat.
We're close to Yamamoto's bomber wreck right now after quite a slog through the jungle.
It was only supposed to be 30 minutes, and we were hedging on 2.5 hours, and I had no water left, I had no energy left, and I didn't think I could fight.
It was 2.5 hours, but it wasn't 2.5 hours on flat, dry land. It was 2.5 hours of going in the mud, and you had to come up, and one of the fellows lost his boot or lost his shoe.
You can see people slowing down and kind of dragging as we're moving through the jungle and stuff like that. But Mr. Portillo was always up and ready to go. Mr. Portillo almost taking charge of the area as he's checking everything else out. It was pretty damn impressive.
One of our Navy SEALs, Barry here, doing what they train to do all the time.
I felt a lot better with Barry there, and the longer it took to get to our destination, the more I was suspicious that we were going to be led down a path to whatever killing field was waiting for us up there. It just should have been 30 minutes, and it was an hour, it was an hour and a half, it was 2 hours, and then ultimately 2.5 hours. And the whole time I'm talking to Barry and saying, Barry, I got a bad feeling. I don't know how many times I said it.
Barry happened to be the closest to me on that hike, and his head was on a swivel, almost like an owl. If he could, he would have gone, his head would have gone all the way around. But knowing that he was watching, he didn't have to say a word, that made me more aware of who was around us. And I honestly couldn't count how many young people had machetes. I'm talking children, not just adults.
Barry's a big fella that never really seemed too nervous, but near the end, he even said, Dave, I got a bad feeling too. I think they're going to take us somewhere to do something bad. And I said, well, what do we do? And his plan was, I'm going to chop one of the leaders' heads off, and you grab his machete and start hacking him. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness gracious, this is bad. It's an international incident. But thank goodness he was there. At least he was planning. I was so tired I couldn't plan.
Another thing that alarmed me was not only the look on the natives' faces and their eyes, but the machetes that they had in their hand, and then they chew what they call a betel nut, which is a stimulant, and every time they open their mouth, it looked like blood was coming from their teeth and their mouth, which added to the the frightful situation, because they were looking at us smiling, and they had these machetes, and I don't know if they were smiling, but their mouths were open, and it looked like their mouths were full of blood, and as they were handling the machetes.
When you see people you don't know around you, just watch their body language and everything else. We had just a group of natives just following us out there, and it was almost like a parade. And almost every one of them, to that person, man, woman, and child, was carrying a machete.
You couldn't help but think, are we in deep trouble here at some point?
They didn't seem like the happiest of people. They didn't seem happy that we were there, and I was getting worried. I was walking in the back of the line with Barry. I was asking him, like, well, what are we gonna do if they try and attack us? He goes, I'm gonna just start hacking, and so do you. And I go, okay. And just like my dad said, this isn't how I wanted to spend this day.
I had Tim with me, so I wasn't worried. But the best thing is, you take care of the problem. And if you've got the mindset to take care of the problem, then you're going to take care of the problem.
David said he ran out of water. I did not, but I was not willing to share, and I didn't want anybody to know that.
We are at Admiral Yamamoto's Betty bomber that was downed near Boone in southern Bougainville, and we've been slogging through muck to get here, and pretty thrilling to actually be here and associate what historical significance this plane being down had on World War II.